Brody,
How's it, man?
what's up, man?
Are you good?
I'm okay, man. It's been a while.
It's been.
It's been.
I need to so invite some guests.
We have guests now.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've lost track
Count.
of. Yeah, I've lost count of how far we are.
Episode 17.
Episode 17. You see, I'm chilling with people with sharp minds. So yeah, man. So this is another installation of Generation Great. So if you guys didn't know, now you know.
If you didn't know,
Please
now
go
you know.
like and subscribe. I sound like I'm introducing a YouTube channel, but it is a YouTube channel. I mean, yeah. So yeah, man. House rules.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, we need to do our daily mantras, our Zen, so that we are in touch with the universe. Obviously you are going to start because
let me start.
you know we haven't seen you in a while,
Yeah,
so you need to tell us what's up, man. Where have you been? You know.
No, I've been around doing my thing.
Sure.
So this week's mantra, I was actually speaking to my cousin Kwahile yesterday, and he said something interesting. So he's concerned about his future and whatnot.
Sure.
And he's also a musician like yourself.
Yeah.
So he was basically saying that his thing is he understands that with success, he said something beautiful. He said, my thing is, I know I want certainty, but
Sure.
I know that it's not guaranteed.
Sure.
That's where he is a life in right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
I understand that success is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
But the thing that's holding me back is I want certainty so much. And I was like, that's so good because you are self-aware. You understand where you are and why you're afraid of doing the things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I want to say this to you, bro. Don't be so concerned about the guarantee. Nothing in life is guaranteed anyway.
Sure.
For the fact that you are aware.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
you are
true.
aware that there's no guarantee. Don't seek certainty. Just do the thing.
Just do.
Yeah. So yeah.
And I think in most cases we just we test the waters.
Yeah,
We're I want to see if this works out.
Mm.
And actually,
You're
the trick
your
is
progress.
trick is in you finding out because you're doing. So I think a lot of the times we always want just to test the waters and be like, it's not gonna work out, so let me stop doing.
Yep.
You actually want permission to stop. And we all know that's not good. Doc, for me, I think this week, but before I get into it, I need to introduce myself. So my name is CRM and you go by. We just started. Say that again. I don't think they got it.
Inform, but I prefer Mobi.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I'm a conqueror. I conquer the
All right.
world.
Yeah. We just start, guys. We don't introduce ourselves because the thing is you already know us. But
we assume that people
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think for me the biggest thing was just consistency. I think be a man of your word.
Yeah.
Do what you said you're going to do. If you're going to prepare for that test, prepare for it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that beats you keeping your word and doing what you need to do. It's very short and simple. There's no philosophical way around it. It was just that. Just be a man of your word, and that's it.
Okay.
Man. So you're gonna introduce our topic for today.
Yeah. So our topic for today is have we as Africans been too much influenced by the Western culture to our detriment, to a point where we now we're past mimicking them. We've literally adopted the Western way of doing things in terms of how we behave, how we speak, how we think, and how we generally do things.
Yeah.
And the danger in that is that we are losing our African identity. We're losing ourselves. Yeah. So that's what I thought we should talk about today. So what are your thoughts about that?
Bro, I think for me, when you are asking that question, I think the answer is also in the question, because when you say, do you think we are losing our African ways and we're becoming more westernized? But what is the African way? Because I feel like for us, we need to codify and say what is being African and what does it mean for us, in a sense that I can't lose something that I've never had.
But by virtue of you, for example, sure. Right. So you have like a certain identity. I'm Zulu from KZN.
Sure.
And that is my culture, and this is what we practice in my culture.
Sure.
Those are the traditions.
Yeah.
And this is, you see, so that's.
Yeah. You know why I'm saying maybe we need to go back in terms of defining what that is.
Yeah.
And what that entails for me and my offspring or future generation, right? Because I've realized that the education system that you got in terms of teaching us what it means to be African is not accurate. So, for instance, we don't know what the term Nguni means. We don't know where our ancestors originally came from. I mean, there's talks that as Zulus or the Nguni nation comes from Kenya.
Yeah, like
it goes far as
Central
Africa, right? And that education is not passed down on us because obviously as Africans we didn't codify things. We only sort of would put things in songs, in dance, in like traditions and stuff like that. So I think what I'm trying to say is, before we actually go into are we losing our Africanness, I don't know if that's a term, but I will. If we're losing our African identity, we need to sort of determine what that means. What is being an African, and where do we stem from?
So is it not enough that you're just born here in Africa?
Yeah, but the thing is, also tradition changes, because what what we practiced back then, or what my forefathers practiced 50 years ago, is different from what is practiced now. And I think also that's the thing about tradition and culture, is that for that period, there was a reason why that was done like that. For instance, I only found out the word makoti actually stems from an Afrikaans term, which means I'm gonna find it. Makfer onsti. So like makoti.
Is it?
Yeah. It's like ifastera.
Oh, make us tea.
Make us tea.
Yeah.
It's like ifastera, as in like it's an Afrikaans term that we adopted and we took. Even the way we mourn in terms of when in the black culture, people wear black, and apparently that was during the Queen's time when someone would pass on, they would wear black as a symbol of mourning, and we've sort of adopted that and took it in our culture. So when I'm saying the reason I want to know have we lost our way is because we need to know which way is it.
Okay, so I think your thing is we don't know. Me, I don't think that we don't know our African. I think we have to relearn. That's what I'm thinking. I think we have to relearn what Africa
exactly.
Relearn and identify what does it mean being African in the new age, right? As you're saying, tradition changes, meaning over time things start, but the problem starts when we are completely losing ourselves, right?
Sure.
For example, me, right? When I tell people Xhosa, they're like, Xhosa kanjani and whatnot, can you speak Xhosa? And I'm a perfect example of someone who's lost their identity,
Yeah.
So there are multiple factors to that. Where I grew up, which is mostly, Soweto for the most part is multicultural.
Sure.
And you can't just identify just one thing
as Xhosa, because also the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you engage with are not all Xhosas.
Giti, I think my grandmom's is Zulu.
Sure.
My father was Xhosa, my grandfather was Ndebele. So I'm a mixture of
all these
things,
languages, and that's the reality with Sowetan people.
So it's difficult to identify the one thing. Okay, Mpumala, But me, obviously, usually they say, it goes to what your father. So you adopt your father's culture or tradition or whatever. That's what typically happens in black families, right?
Yeah.
So me, I don't think I've ever claimed Xhosa people. Ever, you know.
But also, you said something very important, Manji, saying that also it's in your identity is linked to the way you grow up and the place in which you emanate from.
Yep.
Because that's very important. And I think also the thing that we need to ask ourselves about being African, because we always say, "Kwakwenziwani kudala," is, but isn't culture and tradition supposed to evolve based on obviously where we are going as people? Because culture, for instance, is in the language, in the nuance, in the traditions, in how we do things. Lebo Mashile, some other show, said something very powerful about are we preserving culture and doing things as they were done, or are we incorporating whatever we are also learning in this in the current dispensation? Because we are also lived experiences. We are ngoba siphume Soweto sihlale Soweto, yes ngiphume emakhaya but ngimuvele Soweto. Mangifika khona, there's a way in which we communicate, and it's totally, and the things that are done there engizibona ukuthi people are actually comfortable with doing this. It's a universal language. No one has to tell you ukuthi what chazana ukuthi fede, like it's sure fede mnandi, you understand? So it's a form of language on its own that is adopted because of the place in which we are at.
And also the fede, that it comes also from that thing that we are multicultural, right? So what happened is people moved from like their rural areas, because you know what happens, people from rural areas or where they're originally born have a strong sense of culture.
Sure.
A strong sense of tradition, because for the most part they still practice this their traditions for the most part.
Sure.
And I think we're missing what is our tradition. Yes, culture is simple. You're Zulu, you're Xhosa and whatnot. This is our culture.
Sure.
But what is your traditions? What do in the Zulu nation, what do they practice as their tradition that identifies them as Zulu? I think that's where we have to start breaking it down.
Yeah.
And
I think
which
also
goes to the point to us identifying African. What does it mean being an African? As an African, this is what makes you an African. I think that's where you're trying to go. Yeah.
That's where I'm going. Also, I feel like people also want to impose like what it means for them in that context. Because, for instance, I know that there's quite a lot of their culture. There's a tradition within culture for Zulus. Some Zulus who stay within a certain region would practice certain things insofar as it comes to traditions and culture and all these other things.
And rituals and whatnot.
But now, my problem is, because we also don't have a track record of what was done previously, that would say sonke asibuyele lapho. So for me, it's like, then is then will you say I'm lost, I'm a modern Zulu or lahlekile if I don't do certain things because of the environment in which I'm in? If I were to go to Russia now and then in khona, would you say I need to go slaughter a cow in Russia, ngibike umuzi wami Russia, or do other things? I would obviously not do that because I'm not within that. I'm not in a space that allows me to do that, right? So another thing that we also need to look at is, are we preserving culture and language for purposes of just preserving it for it to be constant and rigid? Or are we saying we will grow culture according to what is required now? What is it that we need now? Because, for instance, there's quite a lot of people manje abashadayo are you actually going to charge people ilobola, 11 cows in this current Cyril Ramaphosa economy? So are you going to say, no, it's cultural, which goes back to what I was saying now, that akekho umuntu ozofika mfethu ezekini aqhube inkomo ezi-11 ezolobola, let's say your sister, and then kumele niyithathe lezo nkomo niyifake ngaphakathi.
So essentially the modern way of doing that is
cash, right? No one said akubhadalwe ngo-cash. Who then said akekho othe, I want to know who said no, cash is also acceptable. Were they following tradition? Were they trying to preserve tradition? Or were they saying the easiest form of doing this thing is using cash? So that was also an extension of them saying, look, we can't use cows. We can't transact using cows. Let's use man. Yeah, bo?
So they're still practicing the same marital tradition.
Sure.
But now it has
adopted the
modern way.
Sure.
So your thing is, are we adopting new ways? But I think my thing is, it's not even growing, my thing is literally adopting the Western cultures. Like, we listen to hip hop, we speak English,
Sure.
So that's my thing. In as much as we have to, as you're saying, we have to understand what are we doing? Are we completely discarding our cultures and traditions and whatnot?
No.
Or are we growing and whatnot? But I think for the most part we have I think we've diluted our African identities in how we behave now,
Sure.
especially for people who live here, Gauteng, because Gauteng is a mixture of everything, and we have mostly a Western influence. Because of these kids, the colors or whatnot on the highest level, whatever, even how we speak, race, all those things. So that's my thing. I think, and it doesn't help that for the most parts, we went to like English medium schools, where they teach English. That's also a huge, because you are most impressionable when you're young, like between the ages of 1 and 7.
Sure.
That's when you learn the most. So if you didn't learn your African culture and tradition and whatnot between those ages, by the time you get to like 16 or 18, you already lost. That's when the Western influence comes into play, because that's all you know.
Yeah.
That's all you've been listening to. That's who you've been exposed to,
and that's where you are comfortable expressing yourself,
and then that's where you lose the identity of what your Africanness is.
Sure.
I think I'm finding it hard to define African without
comparing it to the Western.
Without us defining it with where you're born, because I think where you're born largely forms
part of your
identity.
Yeah, identity as an African person, because you are an African person who experiences Africanness within that confine, like within that region.
Yeah. So my thing is, I'm really struggling. I'm really trying to define what, because you can find someone who is British but they're born in South Africa. Are they still African, type of thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
But now I think that's also where the problem is.
Yeah. Or their parents are Italian, but they were born here.
Yeah. See, I get you. I think also another thing that
is it by birth? Is it birthright? Is it by birth? So I'm trying to what defines an African?
But now, when you are also born here and you're British and your parents obviously are from wherever.
Yeah.
Would you be considered British, even if your lifespan has been that of someone who resides in South Africa, who practices the things that are happening in South Africa? Because I think also the biggest thing is for us is that, like you said, we go to all these schools and we learn. Our education is constantly telling us you need to learn English in the English language.
And the history that
they teach us is that of being a colony. Because apparently the term colony means that you are under the oppression of another country. Don't know why that blew my mind. That really confused me or blew my mind. It's because I honestly thought it was just a term, but it makes sense because it's colonizer, colony. So you're actually a product of the person that oppressed you, which is why I then got to question that term makoti, the term fastera. There's a lot of other things that I'm beginning to question because it's also in the language. The reason why we can't be proper Africans is because the system that we are being put in is not that of an African person. We are taught for you to do well and for you to be right, you must go to school. And what's the mode of instruction in school? It's English. What are you taught in school? It's everything that is English. Even the law that we practice has Roman Dutch influences, English law. There's customary law is there at the bottom, but we are also African. So my problem is, but now does that make me lose the essence of being African? Am I a modern gent because I'm practicing I'm Zulu uqhamuke emakhaya and then ngifike eGoli and then I lose that essence, or I'm still Zulu regardless of where I go. So that's my question. I don't think we can say we are being lost because culture and tradition is a lot like language. For me to get my point across to you, you need to understand me. And how do you understand me? Njengamanje besingakhuluma isiZulu ukhuluma isiXhosa and then we don't care. Okay. If you could. Yes, besingakhuluma isiZulu or sikhulume ilanguage bese siyikhuluma ekas because mina nawe siya mix masekas. But so, like I was saying, so this is part 2. So my thing then now is, if we are saying we want to preserve tradition and culture, are we then saying what was practiced will be what was practiced and then we preserve it and we keep it at that? Or are we going to say we're going to allow the current circumstances to dictate how we practice culture? Because it's the same thing with lobola. Back then we used cows, right? Now we use money. People even go as far as using EFT to lobola, right? So which aspect of culture are we going to preserve? Because that's my thing for me, that 50 years from now, our kids wouldn't even probably do it the same way our grandfathers did it, right? Which is evident in how we're doing it now, that we don't do lobola the same way. We don't wear a tradition the same way people used to wear it, right? As hambing amabheshu manje, sigqoka impahla and whatnot. So the problem is we can't pick and choose what works for us and then say it's culture.
Okay, so I agree with it's. I think with monetary, with lobola.
Sure.
The thing now was it's more convenient to use money to measure the value of how much you'll take out for the bride, right?
But what is convenience? What does convenience have to do with culture?
I don't think it was just the means to an end.
Sure.
It was not necessarily altering the culture itself.
So it was just the essence. We're keeping the essence of what lobola is. Yes. It's just that we're doing it differently.
Yes.
But isn't that changing? Or because then it means someone thought, hey, let's not use cows.
Yeah.
Let's use money instead for convenience.
I think changing it would be changing the definition of what lobola means. That would be changing, but it was a means to an end, meaning the money now is just
a representation of the cows.
Exactly.
Not the actual
It's just it's just for the exchange.
Yeah.
Only.
But who gets to decide? So what if for now I want to wear? Because a lot of people now.
If you want cows, if you want cows, look, you still can say no. I actually want cows. It's still permissible. It's not like people completely like. It's not people. That's not out of the question. You can say no. I want actual cows.
Sure.
But it does not make sense. Where do you live? Do you have land for those cows? You see, so it's a convenient. That's why I'm saying it's a means to an end. Right? Sure. And also, right, we were discussing something earlier about circumcision.
Sure.
I was saying, I know a guy, right? This guy went to the clinic, and then after that, after he everything was done, they made him umsebenzi.
Sure.
You know, and who's to say just because he didn't go to the mountain, he's less of a man because he didn't do. You see,
probably the ones that went to the mountain would say.
Okay.
Because then, what then makes you? You see, but now you are supporting my thing because now
the clinic
is just a means to
an end.
Yeah, but what
it's if for convenience?
What if that aspect on its own is not the important part, or is not the one that we need to change?
But wait, what are you? Okay, in a bear, I think there has to be some sort of like incorporation of certain things of the new world, right? So the clinic was just to cut off, but there's certain things maybe. I don't think it was just a slaughter car and that's done. Maybe the guy also sat down with Abu Malum and Abu Baba and they started instilling in him what it really means to be a man.
Yeah, but then we can then not judge and say we are losing the modern. We are now being modern about. We are modern Africans and we doing things and we're being westernized because if we are using money as a tool, if money is a tool to then create and make culture convenient, who's to say that 50 years from now we wouldn't even be meeting? We'd do teams. We'll do Zoom calls for Lobola. And Lobola you via Teams invite and Zoom. Okay. Because then no one can dictate and say, but you never showed up. Because the culture is there. We're doing what we're supposed to do, but we're doing it in another way. Also, that's why I'm saying, language is very important.
I'm so challenged by this topic.
I'm also very challenged.
I'm
very challenged because I'm also trying to think about it.
I'm challenged by we don't know ourselves as much as we think we do in regards with culture, tradition, and
the whatever you know. Is it enough to sustain your bloodline? Because I think also that's the biggest thing. I had a chat with Usanel regarding what happens in Mngcwabeni and what's the process when someone passes on. Do you know that a lot of us don't even know? I mean, a lot of people abazi ukuthi masese umuntu uyamehlisa, if someone passed on embedeni uyamehlisa umbeke phansi, then there's a certain way in which you cover them. So that umele mhlambe ilona he has to come and collect them, but you awumyekelela embedeni. But do you understand that it's the little things, it's the nuance, that portion of it? Who's to say that portion is not the biggest part of culture? Because someone might be like, I smell locos, and then that was it. So I'm very challenged about it in a sense that
but
I want to also communicate this to my child in a language that he would understand it. Whether he speaks English at the time, okay, when this is done, this is how you do it. I think for me that's
Are you saying you'll pass on African cultural traditions in English?
In whatever language he feels comfortable in.
Aren't we again losing ourselves in that?
But the thing is, what is then ourself? What is then
ourself is
the essence? Because the essence of do you think uzongilalela mangimtshela ngesizulu? Because then it means I also need to change the setup, the entire system of westernization. Then I shouldn't take him to white schools. I should only take him to African schools.
No.
Because the education is the thing is, again, it's not also, language is a tool we use to communicate. It's not the essence of the culture. So if I'm changing the language and I want to teach you something, if I'm teaching you in Zulu, you won't understand me. And that's what I've learned, that if I'm going to teach you, but you won't understand me, you can try and be like, oh, okay. But if ever I'm going to say, buddy, right now, if you lobola someone, this is what you do. 1, 2, 3. That's the basic.
I think the only people who are facing this African identity problem is people in suburban environments or in, like here in Gauteng and whatnot. People abasemakhaya, I think they know themselves better than us. I think that's because they practice certain things, almost more frequently than us. I think we're facing this cultural identity crisis because we have not been properly even taught by our parents and, abomkhulu bethu nabobaba bethu. Again, it goes to this. You remember the first episode that we spoke about how absent fathers are affecting
the flow of information, because there's a gap.
There's no masculine guidance. Basically.
There's no guidance in that regard. But now another thing which is shocking for me,
and also, sorry, just to continue to the point, it's up to now us to go and find out, because so we in as much as we we want to run away from the fact that about 19 in says it's bizarre about uncle already, so it's time for so I think
Sanelo wants to say, do you want to say something? Sanel's just like, no. But another thing also, and that's the thing for me, it's the Westernization has a lot to do. They're very intentional. White people were very clear when they were trying to colonize us. It's in the way they do it. It's in the language. It's in what they want. For instance, that's what I'm saying. In the Yomakoti, how they called. It's in the language. We call them Omakoti, but where does that term emanate from? It emanates from an Afrikaans name.
But Umakoti, I think we're using it like Gauteng mostly. I don't think Emakhaya they use Umakoti.
Well, some do that. Yeah, but someone who's about to get Nkosikazi is someone who's already. Unless, guys, please correct me, please. Hey, I don't know. I don't.
Mabazo mshata bathu.
Uyini.
Because also I heard somewhere Umakoti literally means our slave or something like that.
You see?
Uzokotiza meaning.
Yeah, but I mean,
but also
remember the essence. Mark
for honesty. What did slaves do? So it kind of is.
But also, that's what I'm saying. Language is very important when it comes to these things, because language, you pass things through language.
Can I ask you a question? Since I can't speak Xhosa to save my life, and I'm claiming, well, I'm not claiming to be Xhosa or anything. Does that now disqualify me saying I am Xhosa by birth?
Yeah, but also it goes back to my question. What constitutes you being Xhosa?
Because my father was Xhosa.
Exactly, right? So now someone could argue and say,
so my kid say he's Xhosa by virtue of me, without me having practiced properly or participating in the
we need someone to translate to us and say, is it by birth or is it by participating in that, in the culture,
in the tradition,
and
rituals
stuff like in the rituals? Because
to be honest,
who's to say that you are more closer than, who can I think of? Any of my friends, my closer friends, I can't name them. But who's to say that you are not closer than them? And what excludes you from that?
But they can at least be closer. They at least.
So you do agree that it's in the language?
Not
because
only,
language also makes things practical. Like,
what about my surname, Dloati? Does that, you see?
Oh, this one is a difficult one.
One.
But I mean,
because even those things, we can't disregard your surname. Also,
yeah,
you know, it's a closer surname. It's literally helps you with the lineage, and it shows you your roots, your African or closer roots. For in my
sure.
example,
yeah.
You know? So again, what constitutes being an African? And
can I ask one question? Then what if culture or tradition is culture or tradition rigid? Is it like set? Because I think that's the system we are struggling with in terms of when we're saying it should be.
I think it should be for preservation purposes.
It should just be like this.
It should be rigid.
So now, what about someone? So what about someone who wants to understand the thing, but they're not exposed to it? Or so does it mean they need to then have those lived experiences and go live in Mhlampe Lalin so that they can understand it? Because if we're saying it's preserved and cannot be passed on, then it means even when we're educating people about it, it needs to apply to, you need to go back. Even you need to go and hlahlela in the context of ukuhlahlela kwasemakhaya, because you are a proper Zulu man.
And to be quite honest, I was because that's where you can only learn.
And also the steps, the process.
Kanjani ungakhona ukuhlahlela? Inkomo ungayithenga mos nala uyihlahlela.
But how are you doing it?
Remember, inkomo, there's this thing about ukuhlukanisa inhloko nesikhandi. So isikhandi uyasazi na yabo.
Do you know?
There's specific terms for
do you know?
I know.
Okay, wahlahlela.
Yes.
Okay.
We've done ukuhlahlela, but the thing is, I can't also claim I know the Zulu. Also, inkomo, yes, or both. But now I can't claim to know the African culture, ukusukela, because, like I said, if I'm using my clan names, I'm praising someone. My clan names are a form of praise. Or that was someone who was living at the time, and they were expressing themselves. It's like hip hop, for instance. They were saying, "Yo,
this is me.
This is me. This is you understand?"
Yeah.
So they were claiming themselves, "Babe Ganjan." Who's to say you can't do the same? Because you also have traits. You have a long list of bloodline who was proclaiming themselves in a language that they could understand. So that's also the tricky part. If we're saying we're preserving it, then it means all this lived experience, then we need to cancel it. We then must go back to a point where culture was still done properly. And if we trace it back, nothing is constant. And especially with practices, it goes back to the analogy yellow ball and umshad. Good people then don't do steps afanai, because some it's like, no, we're going to because of 1, 2, 3. So there was a reason behind why we had to do it like that. Why we had to, for instance, someone might not know the reason for Uti more keeping young and come, but it's a simple reason. You spoiler inyam, and it's used for something else, which other Zulu people know, which it's used for what. But the main purpose of Uisusa at that time, at that point, the urgency, is for it not to spoil the entire meat, because baba, right?
But then it's also used for something else.
Yes.
That's also part of the tradition also.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, who can tell us which?
And also, even with when, example, there's a family death and whatnot, usually they bring a cow, but now they take it to a slachais. Ibuya say,
I just don't know. This topic is making my head spin.
And also another thing that I want to ask you something, Jens. So if we're saying somewhere we lost the process, so would you blame me if I was to say, me as a human being, if I was to say, some of, for example, in campaign if you fail to follow the procedure grand, so what happens is, do we now go back and say,
yeah,
this is deep. So now automatically
the marriage is null and void. Yeah, alogwas.
Understand?
Sure.
So it's deep.
Can you
So-
just relay what Sanel is saying?
Okay, so Sanele is saying that if, for instance, if you don't follow the process of sort of bring. And so, as Sanele was saying, that are we then going to discuss because of we didn't follow the process, then it means we did not comply with what marriage is, or
what does the tradition represent,
Sure.
basically? This is
identity
difficult.
crisis is real.
We have a real African identity crisis.
But you know what I would love for us to do? I would love for us to get someone who's going to decipher this
I think
conversation, because I feel like
it's deeper than
we
thought it
in
was.
in as much as, because look, I've seen on social media a lot of people are like, yo, abo aunt ekumele balande isidumbu bageze isidumbu and all these other things
and stuff, yeah.
so which means a lot of people are actually confused and no one has done the deciphering, of which I wish we could have like a process.
I will have a part 2. I think
Yeah.
I have
So we need
someone
to
in
have a
mind
part 2.
Yeah.
Someone who's going to come and tell us, guys, is this what is it? Is it a crisis, or is it just
We have an identity crisis, bro.
You know?
As Africans, especially modern Africans, I think we have an identity crisis, and
yeah. But you know what? We'll still go out and get
street
interviews and share and get thoughts on the subject. Please feel free to also reach out. If you guys have issues and you guys have questions that you want to ask with regards to auntie Abasha, and you have things that you also struggle with.
Because ultimately the baton will be passed on to us.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Not even will be, is.
It is right now.
You
You
know?
know, we have to know what is Dumbu.
All these things. But yeah, man.
Things, yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2. So this is part 1.
Yeah.
Because but part 2 is coming, and part 2 Wafet.
We have someone who's going to
we need to dissect this because
and also please just send any questions that you have if you also find yourself having an identity crisis and not understanding what it means to be an African, what it means to be an African in modern times, most importantly, and are you also being influenced by the Western culture, and is that affecting how you view yourself as an African? So I think we can wrap it up then.
Sawona babunjani?
Siyaphila njani?
Siyaphila. Besacela uzintroduce.
Igama nguNhlanhla ngokaMhlongo sibona.
Oh, Njomani.
Yeah.
Alright, jabulele ukwazi baba. La ngoba bese ngishilo ukuthi besidinga iduda manje olithe kuba hayi angazi ngoba ucayi noma lunjani kodwa lumayelana namasiko. Ukuthi amasiko mhlambe sihamba kanjani thina ezintsha yamanje. Mhlambe ungacompare kwikhathi zenu namanje ukuthi ngokubona kwakho khona nesakulandela nokuthi mhlambe inimbangela.
Ngizobeka ikakhulukazi nje mandulo. Amasiko ayelandelwa kakhulu ngenxa yokuthi kwakunezikhathi lapho sina ekukhuleni kwethu uthole ukuthi sihleli nogogo ababehlala kancane bekufundise ngamasiko nangokukhula kwakho ikakhulukazi njengesibongo. Ukuthi uzazi njengoba ngathi ngwakamhlongo ukuthi omhlongo ngobani imvelaphi yabo kanjani njalo. Njengoba namhlanje sakwazi ukuzibiza ngenzala sha. Ngoba siyazi ukuthi bangabaselange ula kwazalwa khona ulandi.
Yeah.
Manje inkingeni yamanje la kule sikhathi samanje yithi thina futhi abazali beingane zethu asibafundise lutho bese bahamba babuye balahle. Omunye ingane eningi nje la iyazi ukuthi nje mhlambe ingeka kwaMhlongo ayazi ukuthi uMhlongo lona unjomane kaMgabhi waduka iminyaka kwathini. Enye into enzima kakhulu ukuthi uthole kulomgaqo nje kanje ingane ayazi ukuthi umuzi wasekhoneni wakabani ukuya kwelinye ikhona. Thina sikhule sazi ukuthi njengala ngase Apollo kuyaziwa ukuthi makuthiwa ufuna umuzi wakwaNgcobo ukhomba kubo. Ezamanje ingane ziyazi leyo.
Noma uqinisile phela baba yabo nje le bengayiboni ngalelo lihlo lelo. Mhlambe ke ngokwazi kwakho baba yini mhlambe esingaqinisa kukho mhlambe ukwazi ukuthi senze sho ukuthi ke usiko lehlele kulabe kumele lifike kubo ngoba phela akuseyi asenzeli nina sesenzela nezethu izingane. Mhlambe yiphi indlela ke esingakwazi ukuthi sehlise lo lwazi onalo silehlisele kulaba abancane abezayo.
Uyabona ngiyaye ngithi mina asikho isihlahla esimila singenampande yaso. Ngokusho kwami kanjalo ngizike kakhulu kuzo izibongo qala. Uma uzokwazi ukuthi ufundise ingane ukuthi wena ngowakabani. Uyabona uzokwazi ukuthi asazi isibongo sakhe akwazi ukuthi alandele usiko ukuthi kanjewa kanjani. Uyabona unokuthi nje uZulu nje eyedwa uyini. Uyabona ikakhukazi nje kunalento esithi amanguni namangwane. Zazi ukuthi mangabe ungumZulu ungumnguni noma umngwane na.
Ungachaza mhlambe umehluko unje
ikakhukazi yabona masikhuluma ngamangwane sikhuluma ngamaSwati esikhathini esiningi. Amangwane lawo umnguni kusuke kubalwa umZulu ikakhukazi namaXhosa. Amanguni lawo uyabona bakushuthi ngababala nje esigabeni esisodwa. Kuba nomehluko lapho. Manje lezethu ingane asifundisa ngaleyo nto ukuthi ezazi ukuthi umnguni noma umngwane la.
Mama ngendlela oyibuya ngakhona ngathi nginganaba kodwa ngicabanga ngesikhathi angazi noma mhlambe ngakubuza omunye umbuzo ogcina. Sesikhuluma la ngoba khona into ede sikhuluma emayelana nomshado. Ngoba sinokubona ukuthi khona ezinye izinto eyayeziyeko njengokulobola nje kade kushilo ukuthi sekusetshenziswa imali manje abanye banokwenza uEFT transfer over the phone. Ngombono wakho mawucabanga mhlambe lokho kuyini ukulahla usiko noma mhlambe ukuthi sesibonile ukuthi asikwazi ukuletha inkomo asisenze ngalendlela le.
Kahle nje kuyiyona ndlela yokuqala yokulahla usiko le. Ngoba uma kukhulunywa ngendaba zokuganana ikakhukazi kukhulunywa ngedlozi. Kuyingakho sikhuluma indaba ukuthi kuyaphahlwa lapho. Ukubika ngizobeka ikakhukazi njengentombazana ekhaya. Intombazana amayiphuma iyokwendela komunye umuzi kuyaye kubikwe la ukuthi lo mntwana useyaphuma esibongweni esiwukuthi siyomfaka kwesinye isibongo. Asisho kodwa ukuthi nalaba mabamlahla mabamgade kodwa bamazi manje ukuthi usebiza lesi yasibongo. Uyabona manje masizokhuluma indaba ukuthi ifakwa nje imali inkece ukunqamulela izinto kanti lapho umoshakho.
Hayi no siyabonga baba. Sibonga kakhulu.
Siyabonga.